This little working example is going to show you how to use a brush called Zproject to essentially conform your eyeballs to a perfect sphere. Right, what I have in here presently is just an approximation of a sphere. I've kind of sculpted by hand, and it may be off considerably. So what I often do is take a real sphere, a Zbrush primitive, and add it as a subtool, and then just kind of make it the right size and project the details. In this case, the perfect roundness of the sphere onto my model. Okay, so I'll just leave it. I'm recording on Refine 2 on this guy, which is fine. I will leave that on there. Subtools, I only have two. I have his staff and the guy himself. So let's do this. Go to the Sphere 3D primitive, and you'll see that this is, let me just frame it. This is roundish and of kind of unknown height or unknown size, but what we need to do is we need to make this into a polymesh 3D because that's the only thing that's really appendable to a model. So we'll take that, we'll switch back, and let me just go down here and say append PM3D sphere 3D. It's a lot of 3D, but it should be okay. Now, you can see it's a little too big, so we could scale it with transpose, or in this case I'm going to use size, and I'm sizing my guy accidentally, so I'll undo that, and hopefully he'll come back, and I'll switch my subtool down to the sphere, and I'll size him down until he's about the size of what I've tried to sculpt in the socket, right? If you're building somebody to scale, which this guy roughly is to some arbitrary ZBrush scales, a perfect eye is 2.5 centimeters across in diameter, right? And that's almost without exception for human adults, and only slightly smaller for children. Right, so you can actually, if you're building a model in real world units, you can get the scale of your head from the scale of your eye, but we're working backwards in this instance. We just hit transparency so I can get this into roughly the right place, and we'll do one eye at a time. I may just do one eye and show you how to do it, and then trust that you guys can do the other eye yourself. Okay, so just put this in here, and I'm just gonna, I'll turn off transparency and see how it looks. And I'm also kind of assessing it against my experience with how this generally sizes into an orbit. And to be honest, that looks pretty good. And we could actually just use him, but we want to have a nice continuous mesh. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Zproject, right? So with this guy in the orbit and active as a subtool, I'm going to switch back to my human, and let's see what happens if I just kind of rotate around this guy. I'm going to look at the profile, and in profile I think I need to actually go back to my Z-sphere and or my polysphere, and move him in a little bit. Get in transparency mode because this is kind of it's really important that you don't make him too big for the eyelids that you've already sculpted. Right, and I'm going to switch transparency mode to ghost and see if this is, or turn off ghost and see if this is any better for kind of seeing through my model. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Make sure we're still lined up centered. And we are. And this is good. It's going to be more of a push in than a pull out, which means that the eyeball is deeper, which works fine for me because I want these. I want my lids to remain the same or get bigger relative to the eye. Okay, you saw me grab Zproject, and actually I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to do a little crop of my model to just work on this area. And I was going to turn on solo. You can actually turn on solo and it will do fine finding the sphere underneath, but I'm just going to turn that off instead. Okay, so I'll have my little bit of reference. Now for Zproject, probably what we want to do is we want to mask our lids. I'll go solo really quick, mask my lids. You can see this bottom lid still needs some work, a little bit of improvement to make it a little bit more shelf-like. It's a little bit weak, but it'll be fine for right now. So I'm going to mask that. I'll mask this area too. I'm kind of happy with that, what's known as the caruncula in here. It's not defined, but I like the plane change from eye into that area. And then I'm going to mask the upper lid. And if you're smart, which I hope all of you are, and you will be because I'm giving you advanced warning, you may want to store a morph target of this unsculpted so that we can revert quickly with our morph brush as need be, because sometimes the Zproject is a little hard to control in some ways, and I'll get into that. Should be fairly controllable in this instance, but you never know, so I want to have the option to revert edits that I make. So I'm just going to finish this mask and then I'm going to show my whole mesh again and quickly store a morph target. Okay, zoom out. Show this guy. And we don't necessarily need to be working at level 7, I think, which is the subdivision level that I'm on. In fact, probably it'll be a little bit quicker. Well, won't necessarily be any quicker, but well, if we do it at 7, we'll get rid of all our sculpting marks in the eye, which could be cool. If we do it at 6, we'll have some very high frequency details left in the eye, which could also be cool. So it's a little bit of a preference. I'm going to go at level 6, and here's what we want to do. If you have a shortcut, you delete morph target, store morph target, or you can go into the morph target menu. You all know where that is. Okay, now let's just do a little eyeball select, and we can go with Zproject, and like to see the eye so I know what's happening. Now, when you're using Zproject, you really want to be facing exactly in the direction that you're projecting, because as you go through this, Zproject will project directly into the screen, right, and hit the subtool that's directly behind this object. So if I, for example, try to Zproject here, this is going to go, it's going to shear off at a funny angle and go to grab onto the sphere at this glancing angle, and essentially it really distorts your mesh. I'm not going to do it. Well, I'll do it. So to do it, I turn on actual Z-add, and I'll sculpt like that. And you can see what happens if I turn on the polyframe. Essentially, it shears it all off to the side. And luckily, I told you guys to store a morph target, so we can just brush this back. Okay, foresight, amazing. Okay, so really you want to be at facing angles while you're working on this, and so you're going to have to rotate your model. And so here we go. Let's see, yes, fine. So I'll just project this front area first, and I'll project here. Notice here we have kind of a switch from in to out, so right now I'm using Z-add, and before I was using Z-subtract. I was using the Alt modifier. Up at the top, see I'm rotating again. I'll Z-subtract this and rotate again. and you just kind of want to make sure that it's going flat. So use both in and out in alternation, and good things should happen. Okay. And I'll just go over here, get this, push that in. You see that I'm actually, around the edges, I'm pushing a lot in. So I'm getting a lot more spherical than I was, which may be good or bad. We'll see in the extreme whether this helps. It looked pretty promising from the sphere before I pushed it in, so we'll see what happens. So this is what I'm talking about. Just have to hit the right angles to get this pushed on. You can see even so I have a little wobbling in the mesh, but it should be okay. And we're almost there. So right now as I stroke this, I'm really kind of going right up against the edge of my mask. Right, so a quick solo will show us if we're any better. A quick solo looks pretty good. We'll need some refinement along the edges up here, but that's within our capabilities. In fact, that looks like it's in the masked area, so really when I push this in and make it spherical, it's revealing all the kind of conformed contours of my eyelid. Right, so really I'm going to have to either probably invert my mask and do that. And then let me just look at the inner eye here. Let me turn solo off. I think I said before that it would work with solo on. It won't work with solo on. Zbrush needs to see the pixels behind it to really get the depth of those. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so let me just do that. There's our nice flat eye. A control click on the canvas will flip our mask over. And then we can go in and start to clean up the eyelids, which is always a good idea to have nice tight eyelids. And a couple ways you might want to approach this would be to run a standard brush or maybe even a pinch along this lower lid with some lazy mouse, and I think we'll give that a try. There's as many techniques for this as there are ZBrush sculptors in the world, so I'm sure you can all find some very useful techniques. First thing, we probably want to just clean up our mask a little bit though, because it looks like we have a little bit of an uneven edge on it. So I'm just going to run this with, see if I can do mask pen. Yeah, okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, so just tidy up some of that. Really, I just want to get some of these kinked edges out. And this might actually be where it pays off to go to level 7, just so we have a bit more resolution in our mask, even though our morph target won't work at this level anymore, but we're pretty happy with what we have. So really make this as nice as you can get it. And if you want to have a little bit less of a deceptive view, I'm getting all sorts of funny shadowing that's kind of making it hard to see where the mask line is. Switch your material to something like flat color, and you should have a good idea of where you want to be for your eye line. Right, and this kind of takes all ambiguity out of it, because we're just going to build up to this line. Okay, to make things tighter, I can run the focal shift to one side. Just had a big jump there. Undo that. Put it a little bit back. So exciting, isn't it? Watching somebody paint a mask. Well, you guys asked for it, so this is what you're getting. Okay, I'm going to actually tighten up my selection so I don't have so much else around it. There we go. Give me a second. Computer is thinking. This is the downside of level 7. Small things like this can take some time to compute. Actually adding a bit to the mask, which we'll have to Zproject again. There was an accidental control click on the canvas that needs a little bit of an undo because I blurred out the mask. Okay, let's see what kind of form we have here. Get rid of some of those stray areas there. Yeah, we just go back to our double shade. And you see that's all right. It's pretty tight anyways. And now you can do anything to help to unify this. I'll use the clay tubes brush with just a very small embed and a fairly low intensity here to just build up some form in these holes. It's a lot like a flatten brush, what I'm using right now. Just kind of a little bit more controllable for me than some of those brushes. Okay, it's getting flat, which is okay. I still probably need to address some of the contours of it, meaning the angle at which the eyelid leaves the eyeball, how perpendicular it is. But that's for something beyond this how-to. That's more sculpting and less tools and techniques. Okay, and a quick go over on the lower lid, which needs a little bit of attention anyways. I'll have to thicken him up shortly. In fact, it's not a bad time to thicken him up while you have your mask, though, if you're in the same situation I am. Okay, let's just look at that, and I'm going to invert the mask one more time. First, I might do one more sneaky little thing, go with a standard brush and kind of a tight alpha and a lazy mouse. Right, so I've turned lazy mouse on, a radius of 30 is pretty good for me. I'll turn the focal shift back down to something in the middle, and I'm just going to do a little push from here. Let me give a maybe 10 or something for my intensity. Just going to push along here and see what happens. And then a little bit of a replay last, see if I like that. And it's okay. Again, kind of the limitations of our mask kind of limit us. But then if I go back in here, turn my solo off, and grab Zproject one more time, I'm just going to tighten those areas around here and up here. And hopefully everything will be fine. Okay, so I think that's where I'm going to end this little example. Just go to solo and hide this, clear my mask, and I'll step down one level just so I can show you guys the morph target on and off. So I'll get rid of my polyframe and I'll just switch morph target, and you guys can see the difference. So it's a perfect eye, a perfect round eye, and some ways it looks less sculptural, but we'll have the option of kind of putting a putting a cornea on it and other depressions a little bit later on as we get closer to the end of the sculpt. But for now, it's good to kind of conform these just so they're flat and round, because nothing makes a sculpture as nice as a good round eyeball. When I'm running sculpture workshops and my portraiture workshop, that's one thing that I emphasize. Make the eyeball, and make sure you keep your fingernails away from it, because any kind of dents or depressions that go in there ruin kind of the beautiful kind of highlights that you get on it. Okay, so that's just a medium length tools and techniques for you. Hope that you find that helpful. Thanks.